Well, that's why I tend to be impatient when I see governments underperforming. These are not easy discussions, but at the end of it, they come out committed to making the strategy that's expressed in that strategy map and successful and achieve the performance targets in the measures. It's a great tool to educate all of your employees. It's a one-page summary of your strategy and a second page with metrics related to the strategy that they can understand. For the first time, the employees will understand what is the mission and the objectives of the agency and the ministry that they work for. And that's huge. It creates tremendous motivation, and it creates innovation. Because once they know what you're trying to accomplish, then they can innovate to help you accomplish it. Because we're not telling people what to do. Exact opposite. We're telling them what we need to accomplish and let them figure out what to do. They're empowered to be very creative and innovative because we're clear about what the objectives are and how success will be measured. 3, again, we solve the alignment problem. You know, just like Barcelona, we'll take the high-level balanced scorecard, cascade it out to scorecards for each of the agencies, and then drive it down to individuals and performance goals. We have the opportunity of learning and improving, seeing where it's working, where it's not working. You know, power of measurement. And then finally, very important, where we started, we have a way of being accountable to our citizens. Citizens, oh, you work in the bureaucracy, you know, you don't even have to come to work. No. It's really hard where I work. We have these challenging performance targets, and here's what we're doing. It enables the people in the government to say, oh, you know, I can be as high performing as somebody who works for a bank or an insurance company or telecommunications companies. Like them, I have clear performance targets, breakthroughs, and let me tell you, we're doing it. We're achieving it. So both accountability and pride in the performance. You know? You're working for the citizens of the state, delivering value to them. And you can measure it. You can point to how this is making a difference. So that helps us get alignment within each of our ministries and accountability. And I gave this talk 15 years ago. I was invited out to one of the states in the United States, Washington State. This is the northwest part of the United States. This is where Boeing builds its planes, and Amazon and Starbucks got started. So if you think about Washington State there. And the governor of the state, who's a great leader, he says, I want Washington to be the best performing state in the union. And so he was going to, and it did. He invited me out to teach his agency people about balanced scorecard. And at the end of a day and a half of training, the governor came to me, said, Bob, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming out and doing it. And we're going to do this. We're going to get scorecards in all of the agencies. And I'm going to allocate resources against it, and this is going to work. But he said, there's a problem I have that is not going to be solved even with doing balanced scorecards in all of our agencies and departments. I said, well, what is that? And he says, salmon recovery. I said, well, tell me about that. He says, well, you know, salmon is an important fish, but it's disappearing from the waters around the state. And according to the U.S. federal government, they might label it an endangered species, like the bald eagle is an endangered species. And once an animal is labeled an endangered species, the federal government can do whatever it takes to protect that species. And in the case of salmon, the governor tells me they could blow up hydroelectric dams if somebody felt it was interfering with the salmon's ability to go upstream to create new baby salmon. They could stop fishing. They could stop agriculture because of fertilizer runoff. They could stop, you know, all kinds of growth. He says, this is a train wreck. If I don't want this happening on my watch. He says, can you help? Fortunately, he says, no one ministry, no one agency, no one department owns this problem. And it's bigger than an agency. because what affects the health of the salmon depends on 6 other states and another country, Canada, plus 27 independent Native American tribes, Indian tribes, all of who like to fish. So very fractured governance. And it's not just that we have a state government, but a lot of federal governments are looking over my shoulder. The Agriculture Department, the Commerce Department, the Interior Department, Environmental Protection Agency, State Department if I have to negotiate with Canada. So I have a lot of help from Washington, D.C. And then there's a lot of agencies involved, all of whom have some impact on the health and sustainability of salmon. In addition to the state agencies, we have counties, cities, water districts, port authorities. So this is what we would call a fractured governance process. Unfortunately, society's problems don't fall neatly within the boundaries of government structures. And so the challenge is, how do we mobilize diverse governments to solve a problem? In this case, salmon recovery. He says, if you just look at all the regulations that impact salmon recovery, this is a simplified diagram. I says, Governor, he says, not to worry. We can do this. He says, really? How does that happen? He says, well, we have to start and think about this from the point of view of the customer. He said, well, who's the customer? I said, the salmon. That's your customer. Your job is to make that salmon healthier. What you have to think about is, if you were the czar of salmon, what would be your strategy to have a more successful species? He says, how are we going to do that? He says, why don't you invite all representatives from all those different agencies, state agencies, federal agencies, local agencies, as many are willing to show up, and put them in the same room and say, okay, you guys are all here to create a winning strategy for salmon. What would you do if you were the king or the czar of salmon? And they did it. They actually created a salmon scorecard. There's no agency here, and there's no government, no corporation, but this is a strategy for successful species. So we had a goal. The customer, protect an important element of our quality of life, a productive and diverse salmon population, meeting all the federal and state requirements. What are the critical processes we have to perform well? Where do we have to collaborate with other agencies to do this? And what kind of resources do we need in order for this to be successful? And they got measures, for one or more measures for every one of those objectives, and they started collecting the data. And then they met monthly, quarterly, to see how well they were doing. People from diverse agencies coming together to solve a common problem, and they could go back and say, what can my agency do? Where do we fit? How do we contribute in this overarching salmon scorecard? So this turned out to be a powerful message. And here's where the shared value idea comes in. Because some of the problems, in fact, almost all the interesting and important problems we face can't be solved by any agency or any ministry. It's going to require collaboration across organizational boundaries. And what we need is not words that say collaborate and partner. We need a management system that encourages that type of collaboration. And so it seems like a trivial example of salmon recovery, but keep that in mind, because this is the key to shared value.